apologize for that. But
Technical
there are times, Linda,
difficulties.
huh?
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, there are times Linda and I get together and we start talking long before we go live, and today we did that, and so we decided to go live. The one thing you'll find out about Linda and I is that we're pretty authentic. This is who we are. Um, but we were talking before we came on the air about um, um, it's okay just to be you.
Right.
And you went to an event that you go to every year, and came home from that with a concept of this. And I started reading and have been working through a couple of different books, and that was the same theme. I think it's more than okay just to be who you are. I think it's mission critical.
It is. I mean, you can't really be, do, or have anything else until you embrace being you.
Right.
And, maybe it's because I'm at that stage in life. I don't know. But I just finally realized that it's okay just to be me, not me, the coach, me, the mom, me, the sister, me, the whatever. It's just be me. And then all the other things that I want me to be, do, and have will align.
Right, exactly right. It's very interesting. We all know God works in mysterious ways, but for us to be literally the thousands of miles apart that we were physically,
yeah,
basically the same concepts come to us. And so, and since we started this balancing act, that's been the case.
Mm-hmm.
All along. And so, whether you like our content or not, we do know that we're supposed to be doing this. And back to your comment, me the mom, me the coach, and everything else. We take all those different hats that we have worn over the years, and when we put that hat on, we try to fit into what we have been schooled, taught, or coached that hat looks like.
Right.
And that's not always a good thing.
No, it's like we try to fit into the identity we're assigning ourselves.
Yeah, we get told, as from the pastor side of it, I look at, me, the pastor, what does that look like? What is it supposed to look like? I'm not pastoring a church now, so have I lost that part of my identity? But I'm in a season where that's not mission critical. And I know there will probably come a time when I move back into some sort of ministry, but I can't let the pastor side, the coach side, all of that dictate who I am. It's a role.
It's a role, and who you are shapes your role of pastor, not the other way around.
Right.
And I think a lot of times I know I do, I get wrapped up in the term, the identity, the requirements. And even though you're not a pastor at a church right now, that doesn't mean that you don't look at life like a pastor.
Right, exactly.
Because pastor isn't what you did. It's a part of who you are in your heart.
Right.
And that's, and for better or for worse, that's one of the reasons I don't go to a regular church, is because, especially as I was growing up, I could definitely see the difference between the ones that were very passionate about what they were doing and saying, and those that were doing it just because that was their job.
Right. Yeah.
And if you've never had a church leader that was fully in love with being and spreading the word, the one I think of is he was my friend in high school, it was her uncle, but I didn't know that at the time. And he ended up being the parish priest out of my grandmother's parish.
Okay.
Tiny little
Okay.
parish out in middle of nowhere in
Yeah.
Nebraska. And
There's a lot of middle of nowhere in Nebraska.
yeah, and he had been a priest and then kind of lost his faith and left, and then he came back. And you could tell he had found it again because everything about what he did during Mass and during talking to people, he was so full of joy.
Yeah. Mhm.
And we've got another priest friend, Father Tom, who just absolutely, I mean, he's in his 90s and he's supposed to be retired, but I know he still does Mass.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it's because it's his calling, it's not his job.
Right. Right. Right.
And, you know, and my husband was an atheist and him and Father Tom were friends.
Yeah. 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 And because people who have that passion, uh, they don't allow that to overrule the possibility of a friendship with somebody who doesn't believe the way they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I've been thinking about my role, in the financial side of it, coaching and doing things like that. And I've looked back at the training, which was very expensive and very intense. And I do things differently now. However, the organization that I went through the training, they're doing the same type of training, exactly the same thing. And the rhetoric, and you have to do it this way, this way, this way, and this way. And you know what? That doesn't work for everybody. And uh, so I I try not to use the names of the people that I've
Right.
trained under, and because then people comes back. Well, Billy Ray Bob says you have to do it this way in order to make it work. Well, yeah, but that's not going to work for you. you know.
Well, I
Um,
think that's where your background with Dusk and all of that comes in
mhm,
because systems are wonderful. They
mhm.
give us a starting point
Right,
and they give
right.
us a roadmap. But there are several ways to get to where I'm going.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
And to force me onto a path that my brain and my personality are going to struggle against
Right,
sets me up for failure.
right. Yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I look back at some of the folks that I've coached or attempted to coach, I tried to fit some of them into the pattern because this was if you're going to be this type of coach representing this type of organization, you
Right.
must
This
do it
is,
this way.
yeah.
No, doesn't work. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of coaches who work with this fellow and his team and everything else would say, no, no, it definitely works. Well, yeah, maybe for you, but when if you're honest with yourself, you probably lose more clients because of the rigidity of it.
Right. And
Most people can't fit into that.
I think if anything we've realized over the last few years, finances are extremely fluid. There's nothing rigid
Oh
about them.
God, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. We talk about finance, and we talk about money as currency, and that's emotion. That's that's movement, and so and most people have a negative concept of money, and it goes all the way back to the love of money is the root of all evil. Everybody was taught the love of money,
Yeah.
or money is the root of all evil. They take parts of scriptures, and I blame a lot of pastors on that, and I blame a lot of yeah. Anyway, um, uh, and some of the boy, I'm going to get in trouble for this one. Some of the false teaching that pastors are using when it comes to teaching folks about money. And trust me, I've been under the system where I had to speak these words, and I believed them when I did, but I don't any longer. Um, is that you are putting a person in a position where they are, in your eyes, in the pastor's eyes, obedient to God, or they're being um, uh, I guess, disobedient, especially when it comes to giving and tithing. And I think people misunderstand the whole concept of tithing. Like I said, I've got some pastor friends. If they listen to this, you're going to say, "Okay, Sam, you're going off the deep end here." But without getting into it fully, um, if a person is in debt to the point that they can't make ends meet, and the pastor tells them you need to be tithing, you should run away from that pastor.
Well, there are
There's a
different
lot
ways to tithe.
there. Exactly, exactly. And we've talked about this before, and there are a lot of things a person can do to give or give back and have that sense of of fulfillment that tithing or giving to a nonprofit, to a church, or whatever brings. But if you are in a bad place financially, but you write that check out or you donate that 10% every week, every month to the church, there's a resentment that's going to build.
Yeah.
You can't help but build it. It's human nature. I could be paying XYZ and I don't agree with the way the church is spending my money. Well,
Well,
first off, it's not true.
and if you're tithing to the church or organization or something instead of paying your mortgage or your car payment,
Yep.
that puts you in distress.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's not what tithing is meant to do.
No.
I don't think tithing has to hurt.
Yeah. I stop and think about this in the training and stuff that I receive. There is one person on earth I would like to sit down and have this discussion with. And that I know he's a believer. I know he strongly believes in everything that he teaches, and he has done a lot of good in the world. But I would love to have the tithing discussion with him. And I believe that. So here's where we get off track. When a person is in the mind of growth, I want to learn, I want to do new things, I want to continually grow, then they will look at all sorts of different things. They'll listen or read books, they'll do things like that, and they'll be open to not necessarily new ideas, but a revelation of something new. And maybe I was wrong about this. And it doesn't matter what it is. Talk about money, talk about life, talk about anything. And like you and I, we're constantly growing because we have a thirst for knowledge, we have a thirst for wisdom, and we want to be better, right?
Yeah. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yep.
And unfortunately, our bodies, we're physically dying anyway, because as soon as you're born, your body is headed towards that end.
The only thing you have left is death and taxes.
Yeah. But sometimes like when you're around people that don't spend as much time as you in the growth area, sometimes it's hard to have conversations. Sometimes it's hard to relate. And I find myself stepping further and further away from certain kinds of conversations, just because it's one thing to talk about a problem and complain about a problem, but if you're not willing to advance a solution, then all you're doing is griping and moaning. That's not productive.
Yep.
And I just find over the years, I have a hard time being around that.
Yeah. I have a couple of really good friends, and we've worked together on various projects, and we still work together, and we have several different political views or ideas, even views within a political view or views within a life view or whatever, that are, really different. But we know how to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because each one of us will kind of sort of do something to needle the other ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poke the
And
bear.
and then oh, I better turn that off because so and so doesn't want to listen to CNN or Fox News or whatever.
Yeah.
Just it's just and we can laugh about it because we know that we have different ideas. We know we have different
Right.
beliefs, but that doesn't take over the friendship.
Right. And, I think we definitely have an all or nothing
Mhm.
mindset as well as a fix it immediately mindset.
Right, right.
And unfortunately, any problem, I mean, there's very few problems you can snap your fingers and just fix it.
Right, right,
It takes
right.
time, it takes effort, it takes collaboration. And I think over the last several years, we've kind of lost that,
Mhm.
not ability, but the desire to
Yeah,
work together.
right, right.
We have the ability to work together. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
if push comes to shove and we're all going to die tomorrow, I think we'd all work together.
yeah, yeah.
But it's the desire to meet on common ground and to find ways to, everybody's so much, this side's bad, this side's all good.
Yeah.
No, there's both on both sides. And I know that there are things that I do and say that I probably shouldn't. I try not to. I try not to, but am I perfect?
Oh, we
No.
still do. Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and so I have to be conscious of what I say and do. And I also have to be realizing that if I decide to say or do something and it does hurt someone,
Mhm.
that I apologize.
Right, right. Well, and that's it. The ability to recognize that you've said something hurtful or done something hurtful, and be able to go back and make amends. I mean, that is so critical. Um, but it also begins, when a person gets to that point, it begins to define who they are. It
Right.
begins to define that this is a loving, trusting person. Yes, they may have said this over here, but they realize, and so people begin to see you in a different light, and relate to you in a different light, which is awesome. And you know, uh, what was that situation? Not escape my mind. I had a funny situation when it comes to um, um, rambling here to try and get it back in my mind. But anyway, um, we can't go through life without the other side.
Right. It's
You know,
it's a
uh,
universal law.
yeah. Are we in a time now when some of the rhetoric needs to tone down on both sides? Absolutely. But we're
Absolutely.
also in a time where folks like us who can come together, who may have different views, can have a conversation. And I um, in my county, in my area, we have a representative who is extremely opposite of me, right down her party line. Um, on the other hand, she'll come right out and say, "Oh no, I don't believe that." But you voted that way. That's the type of person you can't have a conversation with, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe XYZ, but over here there was a bill that said XYZ and I voted for it, even though I don't believe in it. And so we have to get past that and be able to say, okay, I believe this, so I'm not going to compromise my values, my beliefs, just to follow whatever party I'm in. And
Right.
it's on both sides here in Florida. It's really kind of interesting.
I think
Um,
it's on all sides all over the country.
yeah, yeah. And so, and so, if you believe in something, you have to stand up for it. Uh, and actions speak louder than words.
Mhm.
You can stand up and scream and holler about X, Y, Z, and um, but your actions goes against what your words are. That's who you are in that matter. But um, I would that more people could sit down and have a conversation in front of literally, if we had the followings, the whole world, and be on two different sides of several spectrums and
Uh-huh.
still be able to have an intelligent conversation.
Absolutely, because we have to remember before we're any of those other things, we are an individual and we're a human being. We have
Yeah.
to start from there. And a lot of times that seems to be maybe
Yeah.
the forgotten point is that we're all human
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
individual humans, and we need to start in that space and recognize the person we are interacting with as an individual human being
Right.
first
Right. Right. Right.
and grow from there.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think
go
I
ahead.
think I've gotten pretty good at that, but there are times when it goes right out the door.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Depending on depending on who I'm talking to. But
Yeah. Yeah. We like these two gentlemen that are very good friends. And I don't know about you, but there are I believe for most of us, we could have a ton of friends, but there are very few that you would call close friends,
right.
you know. And so um, uh, we can tell each other when we're being an idiot,
Hmm.
you know, and get away with it. Um, and during the last two elections, um, we had we had one guy. I mean, he started putting all everything out on Facebook. So we finally went to him and said, "Hey, you got to stop that. First off, a lot of the stuff you're putting out there, you don't believe, you know." And so he's gotten a lot better about it. But we still remain friends,
Right.
you know. And so um, and I believe that those are things that the more your friends and the people you are around, you can help to become who they are, to know themselves,
Right.
not as a coach, not as a supervisor, not as a worker at McDonald's, but at who they are. The more we can get people to believe in who they are, then the better place the world is in, and it will transcend into every area of their life, and it will begin to weed out the areas of their life and the things that they don't need in their life.
Right. And I think what it does is when you recognize that you're talking with someone who lives in integrity,
Mhm.
you don't have to agree with what their integrity is,
Right.
but you know that you can trust what their integrity is,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that they will make decisions, have interactions that follow that integrity. And I think
Right.
that's something that as a society we've kind of let go of a little bit, and
Mhm.
we think integrity means what's integrous for us.
Yeah.
Now, I have my vision of integrity for me, which could be completely different than someone else's version of integrity for them.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
but I get to live
Mhm.
in my integrity, and that allows me to be fully authentic.
Exactly.
And I'm not BSing people. I'm not making things up just to get a foot in the door. I'm presenting who I am. And there are times when I present who I am that I don't like what I did.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I have to be willing to acknowledge that, apologize for that,
Mhm.
take the right steps for that. And I have to be willing to be able to change my mind.
Right.
I think so many of us are worried, oh, they're trying to brainwash us. No, no,
Yeah.
think for
Yeah.
yourself and not worry about what other people think of you thinking for yourself. You have to start there because if you can't stand up for yourself, how can you stand up for your family? How can you stand up for because you're tied into all of that. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right. Right.
And so, but how I stand up for myself has been refined over the years.
Yeah. 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 We learn to think twice before we open our mouths.
You know, I do it a little bit differently than I used to,
Yeah,
just as
yeah, yeah, yeah.
firmly,
And,
but
it's funny that continuous growth thing. You got to put it into everyday life.
yeah.
There was a situation yesterday where um, after this break that my wife and I had, going on the vacation, getting away from everybody. I mean, I don't want to tell you how many emails and texts I needed to respond to. But the thing is that one of the things we both determined to do was to change our perspective on the day and look at the day as, okay, I need to keep an open mind today.
Mhm.
My situation the other day after getting back was I had to relate to a person that honestly um, I didn't have a whole lot of trust for or in. But I went into the day with an open mind. Well, guess what? It, it was great. I got to have decent conversations with this person. I got to see this person in a different light. If I had gone in with my preconceived ideas of this person and the things that they believed and stuff like that, I'd had a miserable day yesterday.
Right, and some of that is, that's part of our maturity,
Mhm,
and when you're willing to accept someone, on a basic human level,
mhm.
everybody's had bad days. I don't want anybody to hold up my bad days against me forever and ever and
Right,
ever and ever.
right, right.
Um, you know, what's the saying, without those without sin cast the first stone.
That's the
Well,
first stone. Yeah,
that will not be me.
that won't be me either.
I'll be
Yeah,
I'll be ducking and
I'll be
hiding.
dodging
That's
them.
what I'll be doing.
Yep, yep.
But I think, for me, it's just getting back to allowing people to be the human that they are,
Right, right.
accepting them for where they are in this place and time.
Yep.
And if I can be of value to them, be of service to them, that's what I'm there for. If not, I don't need to change anybody's mind today.
Mhm, mhm.
I just need to be myself. And if it allows them to be more open and accepting to something that they may not have been before, that's great.
Yeah, if you present yourself as you, not you the coach, you the
Mhm.
this or you the that, me the pastor, or whatever, just you, who you are, um, it allows them to see you as an authentic person. Now,
Right.
any of the other roles that we all play, because we all play a role when it comes to our work, when it comes to our life, and things like that. Um, there may be a place for that to fit in down the road, but to start with, they need to see you for who you are.
Yes. And I'm finding it very liberating
Hmm. Yeah,
in a good way, not like I'm going off the rails crazy way, but
yeah, no, no, I understand.
I don't have to wake up every morning and go, who am I going to be today?
Yeah, hmm,
I'm going to be me today.
yep. And I have. There has been a huge. Um, it's amazing that we've both gone through this, and Rita is too. This whole outlook, you know.
Yeah.
Um, uh, you know, I had a coaching call last night with a gentleman that I've been working with for years. Um, that's the whole basis of. He sent me some stuff to review. That's the whole basis of. Now that I think about it, that's the whole basis for the changes he needs to make in his life. He needs to be authentic.
Hmm.
He needs to be him. And the situation that he's in, he's not. Situation in it he's in, he needs to conform to a certain set of rules, roles, and ideas, and that's not him. Wow. So it's all around us.
It is. And I think what happens is, when we're young children, you know, very young children, we're allowed to be our authentic selves.
Yep. Yeah.
And then as we get older, we get around, we're in school, we're in church, we're in
Yep.
these
Yep.
areas where instead of just being guided on what might be appropriate behavior,
Mhm.
we're told we have to become this or that.
Right, right, right.
And during the formative years when we're trying to figure out what we enjoy, who we are, what makes our life wonderful,
Hmm.
we get boxed into conformity.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that schools need to be a free for all, because I know what that looks like when it is, and that doesn't work either.
Yep.
um, but I think we need to teach at a much younger age, excuse me, that it's okay to try different things and
Yeah.
to figure out who you're. I'm not saying this very well, but when we're in our middle school years and in our teen years and even going into college, we're very young and we're trying to figure out what the rest of our life is going to look like.
Right, right, right,
And maybe it doesn't need to be the rest of our life. What about the next 5 years?
right, right,
You know, what if I don't want to be an accountant for the rest of my
right,
life, but
right.
I would love to do it for the next 5 years as I figure out what else I want to do? You
Right,
know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Oh, exactly.
and I didn't learn how to approach life in blocks of time until I was much older.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would love for kids in school to be allowed to approach their life in time blocks that is not the rest of their life.
Right, 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 right. But that takes critical thinking.
That takes critical thing. And there are some things you do kind of need to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you need to be cognizant of what you're putting in your body
Yep.
and some of the behaviors you might have, because that will have,
Hmm.
it could very easily have an effect on the rest of your life.
Yeah. Long term.
But you also have to remember kids in middle school, high school, and college don't really understand what the rest of your life looks like. That's
Right, right.
they don't they don't think in 20 years, 40
20
years,
years. Yeah.
because
A lot of them don't think in 5 and 10-year increments.
well, no, because they're 20.
Yeah.
So that's
Right.
a fourth of their life. So how
Yeah.
do they
Exactly.
do that going forward, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I, you know, I look at some things that my son and my grandson have done. Um, my son went to school, college, basically for accounting, and he took a job with a private firm, did a really good job for them, made really good money, and all this kind of stuff. He called me one day and he says, um, "Tell me about this business," because I had worked in it, and I said, "What are you thinking about doing?" And he told me, and it was part of finance, but it wasn't writing loans. It was the financial backside of the
Right.
business. And I said, as far as that's concerned, you have the brains, you have the ability, and you will do a very good job, which he did, um, and made a lot of money for the car dealership. Well, a few years ago, he decided he was done with that,
Yeah.
and he's something to do with medical equipment. I think it's in sales, but my grandson, same way. My grandson is a very good welder, very good, very good welder. Has been since high school. Um, Studying nursing now.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm not so sure how I would feel having a 6'1", 6'2", 250, 280 nurse walk in the room in the middle of the night to check my blood pressure and stuff. He can be a pretty imposing figure,
You know,
but he has a
I've
gentleness in
been
his
in
spirit.
hospitals enough that I'm just happy they come in and check on me, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's true. But he has a gentleness in his spirit
Yeah.
that's, that the nursing side of it will bring out. It definitely will.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I have family who's contemplating changes right now, and it's like what you do does not define who you are.
And I think we haven't gotten out of, back in the day, and some of the young people don't understand this, it used to be you finished school, you picked your career, and you stayed in that career forever. And you stayed with
Yeah,
that company forever.
forever.
And the lifestyle most people have now, that's not conducive to that.
Right.
So I think it's
Very
very
fluid.
healthy to help them think in blocks of time, because you shouldn't have to make a decision on your career and never be allowed to change that.
Right,
Your life
right,
changes,
right,
your
right.
circumstances change, the things
Yeah,
around you change.
yeah,
And I have found that by restarting a new career every so often, it rekindles joy for me. So if you find yourself bored in what you're doing and you're not in a position to just look for something different to do, find different ways to do what you're doing,
right, right.
to approach your work that allows, when I was working in corporate, the last job I had, they found a way to allow me to use my passion in my job, and it wasn't part of my job, but they built it in for me.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting, the only thing that's constant is change,
Oh
and
yeah.
we forget that. We forget that, and the older we get, the harder it is to remember.
And
And
and we don't like dealing with change, but
right,
if you
right.
don't change, you're going to
Yeah,
stagnate,
yeah, yeah.
and I don't want to
All
go
that
out
does is,
stagnating.
yeah, that does is attract bugs. Linda, this has been very, very entertaining for me anyway. Folks, if you're interested in what Linda and I do, reach out to us. Our email is balancingact2024@gmail.com. Reach out to us with questions about finances, about self-care. Those are the two primary areas that we work in. We also both work in DISC, and we work with DISC. It falls into the personality profile, whatever category, but we use it for communication styles. We
Yes.
use it to help improve your communication with your family, with your coworkers, within your organization. So, and we've worked with big and small companies. So once again, reach out to us, Balancing Act 2024. Please, if this has spoke to you in any way, shape, or form, please like and share, and most of all, hit the subscribe button, so that as we bring new information, new episodes, whether you enjoy our weird sense of humor or the fact that we ramble sometimes and go all over the place with our ideas, please subscribe, and we appreciate you. Linda, this has been fun again.
It has. I love our Wednesdays.
Yeah, I do too. So, folks, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye bye.